Amid all the hustle and bustle of leveling and upgrading your gear in WoW, it's important to stop and appreciate some of the details that can be found in this massive game. While questing through the elven forests of Ashenvale, I decided to pay a visit to the lands of the Alliance's newfound members, the Draenei. Far to the west, amid the Veiled Sea, lie the Azuremyst Isles, a pair of remote islands that have been largely undisturbed for millennia. Shortly before the events of the Burning Crusade, however, the peace of the islands was shattered when the Exodar, an interdimensional fortress carrying the Draenei away from the demonic Burning Legion, crash-landed on the western slopes. Not only that, but countless pieces of the ship broke off from the main hull, embedding themselves across the isles and warping the land with their uncontained energy. Today, I want to step into the shoes of a technician aboard the Exodar and assess the architecture of this crystalline marvel, exploring the what, when, and how of this devastating accident. As always, thank you for your fun comments and support, and with all that being said, let's get right into it. One of the first things you'll notice arriving on the Azuremyst Isles and entering the Exodar is how lonely it feels. This is one of the least traveled corners in all of Azeroth, but I think that contributes to its mystery and calm nature. After watching this video, maybe you'll want to make a trip here yourself. Walking down a damaged walkway, you enter the central hub of the Exodar with the seat of the Naaru at its core. Here, Oros holds council, a being of pure light energy responsible for shepherding the Draenei to a new world. Around this main energy conduit, 4 staircases lead to various districts of the Exodar. The Traders Tier is where many of the craftsmen conduct business, the Vault of Lights is where priests and paladins practice their ways, and the Crystal Hall is the home of Draenei shamanism and elemental worship. The 4th wing is blocked off by debris, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Something that becomes evident the more you explore this city is how much of a city it actually is. The majority of the architecture here is not salvage, but the intended look of the area. The Exodar is truly designed to support the cosmic survival of an entire population. This is in contrast to its 3 sister ships that remain in the Netherstorm as a part of the Tempest Keep megastructure. The Mechanar focuses on power crystal technology, the Botanica is the Naaru's personal greenhouse to store interstellar life, and the Architraz is a prison used to lock away threats to the forces of the light. Gee, I sure hope nothing escapes from there. Anyway, the point is, the Draenei really made the right choice when it came to making their escape from Outland. The Exodar serves its role as a city quite effectively even after the crash. With that being said, there are some serious areas of damage that can be seen. In the back of the Crystal Hall, a massive chunk of the ship has quite literally caved in, likely from the initial impact on Azuremyst Isle, and now scattered power crystals and pieces of the ship are being mined out by workers. You can also see an energy conduit running through this area, possibly a component of the ship's power supply buried within the mountainside. Small areas of ruin can be seen throughout the hull of the ship, but another large source can be seen in the blocked hallway from earlier. This staircase seems important, and yet there is no direct mention in the lore of a 4th major district branching off here. I think we can find a more satisfying conclusion though. As I mentioned, hundreds of pieces of the Exodar splintered off during its fall to Earth, including several important areas that now lie within the wilderness of Azuremyst and Bloodmyst Isles. It is my theory that the large fragments mostly belonged to the lower decks of the Exodar. You can see the general shape of a Naaru ship has an upper region and a bottom section with many more crystals. The Exodar city as we see it in-game mostly focuses on the upper levels, the crown of crystals at the top, and the main area inside. This would make our 4th entryway lead not to an adjacent area, but to a level below everything else we have seen up to this point, maybe except for the bottom of the seat of the Naaru. What was once in this area? Well, to investigate that, let's head into the wild. Draenei were not the only ones aboard the Exodar when it crashed. Blood Elf saboteurs infiltrated the vessel and ruined certain parts of the craft, causing it to malfunction when it activated its dimensional travel. These systems, which deal primarily with power and warp, were thrown onto Silvergale Isle, which was slowly corrupted into Bloodmist Isle due to radiation from the power crystals. The warp piston can be found in the far north, crawling with unsolicited voidwalkers. This part is obviously related to the dimension hopping abilities of the ship, but it does not work alone. In the far west, the massive vector coil stands embedded in the slope, leaking blood-red energy into the surroundings. While it's unclear what its actual purpose is, my guess is that it works with the warp piston to power the Exodar through space and across dimensions. The vector coil is the base of operations for the surviving Blood Elves, and they are intent on utilizing the corrupt energy to bring more of their forces in from Outland. Before we move on to another category of wreckage, let us consider one more piece of the engine, Blood Watch. This outpost stands in the center of Bloodmist Isle, and while most of the buildings are constructed from scrap, the central tower stands out. In my opinion, the paneling on the back looks a lot like one of the mana forges in Netherstorm, meaning it could have had something to do with power intake or drawing in energy for use in the other components. It makes sense that a ship of this kind would need a way to recharge its energy traveling great distances, and this mechanism could have played a role in that process. Now, the power and warp systems aren't the only things that would be kept within this mysterious lower level of the Exodar. I think that other facilities would have been placed here as well, those that serve auxiliary roles within a regular society, but would still have a purpose on a dimensional ship. Two things fit perfectly here: cryo-freezing and the escape pods. In Western Bloodmist, players come across the cryo core, an area of the ship related to medicine and, likely, hibernation or long-term stasis. We know Draenei have this sort of technology, as it's revealed in the starting experience, where many of the crash survivors were kept in some sort of suspension or coma while they recovered. Speaking of the starting experience, let's return to Azuremyst Isle, where many more relics of the crash can be found. Escape pods litter the ground in pockets of the woods, but the one that really stands out is the crash site region in Amon Vale, the very first place explored by newly awoken Draenei. This wreckage almost looks like a mini Exodar, and it seems like it could have been the flagship in a series of escape pods meant to shuttle more survivors to safety. Man, I'm still waiting for that Exodar crash movie to come out on YouTube. Now that would be a great resource to look at. So the Exodar potentially has a large lower deck area containing the power systems and some life support units as well. But what we've discussed so far brings up one final question. How big was the intact version of the ship? Well, the most straightforward answer is that it's the same size as the other three wings we see in Netherstorm, but we have to consider its abilities. The Exodar seems unique in that it was able to warp to Azeroth without the main structure of Tempest Keep, meaning it could host more robust warp technology than the prison, the lab, or the greenhouse. Not to mention, it's the only one of the four that would need to serve an escape purpose, as we see with the Draenei. Within the Tempest Keep system, the Exodar itself is the escape pod, the chunk capable of leaving in a dire situation without the rest of the fortress. This idea, combined with the massive scale of the vector coil, and the mini Exodar crash site we see in-game, and the amount of material spread across the Isles, could indicate that the Exodar was in fact a little more bulky than its siblings. Comparing the heights of the top portions of the ships also supports this. Using a mapping tool, the standard wings have a height of about 275 WoW units, while the Exodar is a whopping 475. This really hints that the Exodar is the big brother of the other wings of Tempest Keep, and in fact could support unique warp systems like those we see scattered throughout Bloodmist Isle. At the end of the day though, it could just be a world design choice, but it's a fun theory to consider. I hope you enjoyed my little detour today into the details of the Exodar's crash, and hopefully you'll see this capital city in a whole new way. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, may the Force be with you.